Hello, beautiful friend. It is David Ault, and I want to welcome you here to The Gathering. You have found a video that is a part of a series where we are exploring a really, really big topic, and that topic is non-dualism. And stay with me, because I understand that part of our understanding of that is so intellectual, so out of reach of really, really having a personal experience with it. And that's part of the intention with this series is how do we make it more personal? And let me say, it's kind of like understanding what a visionary is. I love this way of explaining a visionary is that it's someone who understands that the thing that they are passionate for, the thing that draws them, will never be completed in their lifetime. And yet they continue staying true to the North Star of that vision and keep going. Um, it's kind of like the suffragist, my favorite example. There were these women, these pioneers who didn't just believe that they had the right to vote, that that should be something that was equitable to all, but that they were going to begin to do something to take that vision and put action to it. And what's really humbling and endearing and sobering and beautiful is to understand that those beginning women who were visionaries, the visionary suffragists, many of them never got the ability to vote in their lifetime. They are the true pioneers. They were the true wayshowers in order for equality as we know it today to at least be more accessible, no matter how many setbacks we continue to experience. They were at the beginning, they were at the forefront. And what I want to add to this exploration of a visionary is this: I don't believe that we all start in the quest of our vision with the understanding that it won't happen in our lifetime. That happens somewhere along the way. We realize that the capacity, the fulfillment, the boundlessness of a vision will go on and on and on. And what the visionary does is when they have the moment of that realization on the path, they don't then quit. They don't just kind of throw up their hands and go, oh, well, this is never going to come to the conclusion that I had painted on the picture of my head. No, they keep going. It's reminiscent of the phrase that we plant trees under whose shade we may never sit under. It is understanding that we are a part of something that is so much bigger than us, bigger than just this singular lifetime. And we say yes to it. The ability to surrender to non dualism for me feels very much the same. I recognize that I will never reach a finish line where I completely and fully understand myself as the whole because I am still in a dualistic world. I am still human. And in my humanness, I'm on a path. I am on a vision to embrace more and demonstrate more non dualism, myself as a part of the whole. I'm human and I am on a quest to represent and fulfill myself to be the instrument of the absolute beyond humanness. I recognize there's no finish line to that. And so what I do then is I say, doesn't matter. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep expanding and expanding my capacity to not only feel non-dualism, feel that wholeness and that oneness in the midst of all its seemingly absent presence, but to offer it, to share it, to talk about it, to set an example of it as best as I can till I take my last breath. That's what this is about. And so I wanted to share with you that I'm so humbled and so grateful that I have these schools in India They are in a state called Bihar. Bihar is in northern India, right under Nepal. And it's a very stigmatized state. It's looked upon by many other Indian states and Indian people as um, you know, subsisting these people. It's very stereotyped. It's very looked down upon. It's labeled as unsafe. It's all these kinds of stereotypes that simply are not true because I've been there and I have been there for close to 10 years now. And these people are my family and they're just like anybody else. And their beauty and their talent and their capability are just as viable and precious as anyone else's. But it is in this state of Bihar, a city called Bodh Gaya. It's like kind of more of a smallish city. It's famous because that's where the Bodhi tree is. You are probably familiar that the Bodhi tree is a tree whereby Siddhartha came, an Indian man came and sat under it. And in his determination on his pathway to non-dualism, to understanding it and embodiment, he gained enlightenment. He actually had the full experience come through him as his surrendering vessel. What most don't understand that was an event that had a lot of history before it. You see, he was born of wealth. He was not captivated like as a prisoner, but his very rich and wealthy family did not want him to be exposed to all the disease and suffering of the human world. And so he never ventured outside the walls of the conclave of his wealth. And it wasn't until he snuck away that he saw the first remnants of death. You know the story, where he began to see suffering and then was just so overcome by that it completely shifted his life. That was his starting part of the visionary of non-dualism, or trying to understand what is this? What is this about? What is the suffering about? All of that leads him to a stop along the way where, for close to 7 years, it is said that he resided with a group of ascetics, those who give up all worldly possessions, who subsist on barely eating, because they believe that enlightenment is achieved through suffering. And here he is, supposedly 7 years is what I've understood the time frame to be, in this cave, also near Bodh Gaya in Bihar. And I don't know what happened, but somewhere at the end of that 7 years, there was a realization that this isn't it. This isn't it. I often imagine and entertain myself with what it must have been like for him to leave that, what the group must have said to him, how they must have judged him for leaving. On top of his weakened state, he leaves and he makes his way to the Bodhi tree. The Bodhi tree is a papal tree. You can look that up because it has such beautiful characteristics, and it's a tree that's very indicative to that climate and that region. One of its beautiful things is its ability to breathe and the way in which it does things at night that other different species of trees do not do. Um, but he found himself at the base of this tree. And here's the thing that I wanted to share with you that you may not know. In the sacred text of Buddhism, it is said that Siddhartha, now known as the Buddha, he said, "I will not rise from this seat," meaning sitting under the tree. "I will not rise until I have attained the supreme and unshakable enlightenment." He surrendered the fact that he might die there. He surrendered the fact that this physical frame, the last that was left of him, skin and bones, that there was no point of him continuing the search because he felt as though he had exhausted all other forms of making himself available to enlightenment, understanding non-duality. And so he was going to now sit under the tree and surrender totally, surrender wholly, everything else that was left, which was his physical body. He was just going to surrender it all. And he was not going to get up until he had completely and totally entered into a full unveiling of non duality, of oneness, of what we call nirvana. And that's what happened. And he sat there, and as he talks about the process of getting there, he talks about all the other things that came to tempt him, the hunger, the discomfort, the fear, so many different things that continued to present themselves as obstacles that wanted to pull him out of that dedication in order to justify stopping. Very similar to the stories of Jesus, who we read in the biblical scripture about being tempted by the devil being the architect of ego and separation, wanting to, test him in order to promote, include, grab at things that were going to alleviate his own suffering and his own quest. So you start to see the similarities of all these people who have been on these paths of unpacking, of personalizing non-duality. And so that tree, or I'll put it this way, the fourth generational graft of the Bodhi tree still resides in Bodh Gaya. One of my schools is in it's like a village, a sort of slum area that sits behind where the temple is. It's been there for generations, and it is the home of my administrator and his family. And on his mother's side, they have lived there for probably four generations, which means they were there when the Mahabodhi temple was built around the tree. And our first little crumbling school that we rented in that area where the family lives, if you leaned out the window, you could see the Bodhi tree. You could see the fourth generational graft. I give you that context to tell you I've been to the Bodhi tree many times now, upwards of 9 years. I have walked the same road from the lodging or the room that I happen to be staying in, all the way up to the grounds where the entrance to the Mahabodhi temple, where the Bodhi tree is inside. There's lots of security now and lots of different things, but it is the Mecca of all kinds of people, not just Buddhist, but all kinds of faiths who come to experience the resonance and the energy of that sacred place where Siddhartha became the Buddha. So there's something really quite beautiful and quite profound about it. But I was writing this week about how many times I've been to the Bodhi tree. And I used the metaphor of walking from the comfort of my room to the tree, and how just in that walk up this one sort of main road of Bodh Gaya, you see it all. You see hunger, you see leprosy, you see beggars, you see exploitation, you see noise, you see all kinds of things that are the cacophony of all the human senses heightened in such a way that sometimes it feels too much. You walk through all of that. When you are a white-skinned person, such as myself, and you are in that particular area, you become sort of a target, if you will, because there's an assumption that you are of wealth or that you can help alleviate the suffering somehow by a handout. So there's a tremendous amount of begging and crying out and exchanges. And if one does not have a sort of practice of being able to navigate through that, then chances are you would never get to the tree because you would just be so overwhelmed by all of that. And it's been a process over 9 years of going to the tree multiple times. I've been there in the early mornings, right when I've been there in the heat of the day, and I've been there hours before closing time. And no visit has ever been the same. No visit has ever been the same. And not once did I ever say, I'm not leaving until until I am fully embraced in the one, I guess because there are rules and they would throw me out because it's gated and locked. But I was using the idea of, will I continue to walk a literal walk from where I'm staying that year or that visit to the tree? Will I continue to do this walk? And instead of trying to take a shortcut or instead of trying to just shut it all out, will I allow myself to let the process of that walk be a teaching for me? Will I allow it to be both literal and metaphor? Will I allow all of the things on both sides of the road that are screaming at me and vying for my attention to be representational of what it's like to be a human in the world of dualism? The screaming, the pulling, the clawing, the grasping to get attention, to say, see me, fix me, do this, do that. To look at it is this ongoing lesson. Just like the visionary knows that there will never be a finish line, meaning none of these things are going to go away. But will I be able to walk and to navigate and participate on my way to stillness, understanding that the mess of this human reality is not separate from the miracle or the understanding or the experience of oneness. And so, as we explore non dualism in this time, in this week, and in this way, it's it's just an encouragement to you to understand that the best training ground isn't isn't really in some exotic place. You don't have to go to Bodh Gaya or India in order to experience the same thing. All that one needs to do is to use the human world as your canvas, to look at the constancy of conflict, to look at the constancy of suffering and pain, to look at our own loyalties to separation and fear, to understand that even the Buddha in his transformation sat through what he called all the temptations that came in that wanted him to just get up, eat something, flee this, let it all go, give it up, return back to the comfort of what you came from, the wealth of your family. There's so many viable solutions for you. And yet his determination for being the embodiment of non-dualism was such that he learned to see those things for what they were and not let them pull him. Very similar to the story of Jesus in the Bible being tempted by the archetype, the devil, tempting him to save himself from persecution and suffering. And so, likewise for us, there are these voices that are tempting us to let down this version, this path of vision and being a visionary and opening ourselves up to being a vessel of non-dualism, because it's so much easier just to be a part of the world that we came from. Go back to the familiar. Can you have the same determination, even if it's incremental, which is what I'm working on? I'm working on the incremental devotion that Buddha had to say, I will not cease this journey until I have exhausted all time to the last second, the last breath, until I have exhausted all opportunity as David in order to be the vessel, to surrender to the non-dualistic completion, wholeness, the one, to experience not just for me, for myself, as some kind of gift or prize, but to understand that what it does is it at the same time envelops everything around me so that more and more and more of us are remembering together. So your practice this week is that this mess of the world, this thing that looks so chaotic is not separate from the miracle. The relative is not separate from the absolute. It is here with us. Can we continue to walk together? Walk together. Can we continue to have the vision as the North Star, understanding there's no finish line, but we remain faithful and true to that? So I wrote something this week about that, and I ended it this way. Perhaps this then is the invitation, not to rise from our seat too quickly, not to rush past what is hard to behold, but to remain with eyes open and heart softened until the seeing is clear, until the self loosens, until love ripples through form. May that be the path we share together.